Aloha, everybody. As we're just waiting for everyone to join in, aloha. Felina Mai, and let me just stop sharing real quick. And we have a quick activity before we get the meeting started. It's called Mendimeter. So before we get into the formal introductions, while we wait for everyone to enter our meeting tonight, feel free to go to menti.com and use code right here at the top of the screen. And just let us know where you're joining us from, and it should show up as you answer.
The link and the code is also in the chat. If you open the chat, you'll see that.
I'm going to add it again, because if people weren't here before it was posted, they won't see it. You have to, yeah, I learned that earlier this week.
Joining us from Opaika'a Stream.
Welcome, just down the road from you.
I really hope that. Can you guys hear that in the background?
All kind.
Kalamai, that's my dad. The life of Zoom, you know. All right, so we got some answers coming in. We got Wailua Uka, Kauaʻi, me too. All the way up in Wailua. Yep, so if you guys are if you're joining us, please go and head over to menti.com and use the code above. Oh, kalaheo. And we're gonna have this question up for a little bit longer, and we also have a ending question as well. So keep that link open for the end of the meeting tonight. Just let us know where you're joining us from. Kealia, we got some people from Kealia, two from Kealia. We got, let's see, we got Puna, Hawaii Island. Oh, Spark. More from Kalaheo, Keikaha. Oh, who's joining us from Kokeʻe?
Yeah.
You guys got excellent service. All right. Oh,
I
from Kokeʻe.
Mana from Japan.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, go ahead and let us know where you're joining us from. Japan. Awesome. We're international tonight. All right. Do we still have people coming in? Kim?
No, I have not had to let any new people in as of just the first.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'll give you a couple more seconds. 5, 4, 3. Oh, Hanamaulu, Lawai, 2, and oh, Kapa'a. All right. Oh, Anahola.
That was me.
Yes. All right. Well, it's super great to have everybody here today. Just because we are opening up, if you feel comfortable, please feel free to show your video so we can all see your lovely faces. And then as we move on, if you'd like to turn your video off, but just to we all get familiar with each other. If you're comfortable, please turn on your camera so we can say hi to each other. And Julia, I think we can be done with the Mendimeter for now.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to stop sharing.
All right, beautiful. Hi, Seiko, Louise, Shannon.
There's Brian
Awesome.
Tucker. Hi, Brian.
Aiden. Beautiful, beautiful to see all of your faces. And thank you for being here with us tonight. Yeah, welcome to our third installment of Forest Fridays. So this is an ongoing series for the rest of the year, hosted by Kauai Forest Birds Recovery Project. Every month we talk about a different subject, and it's also in partnership with Kauaʻi Invasive Species Committee. So for those of you that don't know me already, I am Halen Chalk. I'm the KISC Outreach Coordinator here on Kauaʻi. Tonight I am joined by Kim Rogers, up in the corner right there. She is our Rapid Ohia Death Outreach Specialist. So if you have any ROD questions for Kauaʻi, she is your gal. We also are joined by Julia Dagman of the Kauai Forest Birds Recovery Project.
Hello.
Yeah, and so Julia and Kim will be fostering any questions that come in after each speaker. We also are going to have a Q&A at the end. So if we don't get to your question immediately after the speaker you wanted to ask, then you'll have another opportunity at the end. A couple housekeeping rules that we have are please save your questions until the end of the presentation for each speaker, or you can raise your hand or drop it in the chat. If you'd like to ask the person directly, go ahead and raise your hand. And then for those joining us tonight, Kim will also be answering any questions that if you have technical difficulties, if you can't hear, just go ahead and drop that in the chat or directly message us. Also tonight, we are joined with a great panelist. We have Ka Kahealani Hamakua of Kanu Ka Aina Charter School. We also have Natalia Tangalin. She is our KISC outreach or early detection botanist. And we also have Kumu Leināʻala Pavao Jardin from Halau Mokihana o Leināʻala. I'm very excited for all of you to be here tonight, and let's get it started. So our theme tonight is about connecting to the forest. How do you connect to the forest? And for me personally, I connect the most when I am up in Kokeʻe and I'm gathering. Whether it is gathering plum for plum season or lay with my Hula sisters or my family, I find that when I'm out in the forest and I'm kiloing Aina and I'm out there and I'm really connecting and actively looking for something in my environment, that's when I really connect to place and I'm really able to become rooted in the activity that I'm doing, as well as with the people that I'm with. So if anyone has gone to go pick things to make lei, you know that you're quiet, you're looking for stuff, but you're also connecting to the people that you're with, right? So that is my personal connection. And a quote from Joseph Navahi talks about Aloha Aina being a magnetic force that pulls you completely in flush to your Aina. And when you can connect that, like Aloha Aina resonate with other Aloha Aina, you're completely in flush together. And that's a quote that really resonates with me and why I really connect in that way. I also have some slides that I'm going to open us up with. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and we're going to talk about the importance of gathering and gathering properly. Let's see. Before I start, our lovely panelists, would you like to aloha our beautiful group of people we have here tonight? You can unmute yourself whenever you'd like. Anybody?
All right, does that include us too?
Yeah. If you'd like to aloha our audience.
Okay, mai kahiki nā kalapuka I ka e hae ai ka mole o lehua. Aloha nui a ka kopakahia pau o wauno o Kahealani Hamakua. He kumu au no Kanu Ka Aina ka oha ma Kauaʻi nei. A he wahi mahalo ke ia ya o kopakahia pau no ke kono ana mai. I am truly and deeply honored to be here today to share, my little ike that I have that I would love to just bala'au with you folks today, and no laila mahalo, mahalo, mahalo.
Excellent. Natalia, would you like to greet our lovely group of people joining us tonight?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here.
And Kumu.
Aloha and Kumu Leināʻala Pavao Jardin. I am so excited and absolutely honored and humbled to be part of this conversation as we speak about something so important and sacred. I look forward to hearing all the mana'o that is shared today. Mahalo nui.
All right, awesome. So I'm just gonna go ahead and share screen real quick. All right. So as we know, it is May, and most May Day celebrations were happening today, considering that May 1st was this past weekend. It is also graduation season, meaning a lot of people are going to be going to graduation ceremonies for college and high school. And we also have Mary Monarch coming up in about a month. So exciting. So for me personally, I really wanted to talk about the importance of gathering and going into the forest and doing it in a pono way. Just as a pono disclaimer, whenever we are gathering, whether it's going to be on private land or on public state land, just disclaimer, when you go out to a private land, just always ask before you go somewhere and ask if it's okay to gather in that place, know where you're gathering from. If it's out on public land and if it's not for cultural reasons, be sure to go and check out getting a permit. That way DLNR and DOFA are able to go and like keep track of how many people are going out to gather and to do these activities. And if you have any questions about where to find those permitting and resources, Kim and Julia are going to drop those in the chat, so you can save that and bookmark it for whenever you decide to go holo holo at Mocha. And yeah, and we have just a beautiful, plentiful place, and we want to be able to protect that place, right? So let's get it started. So our piece right now is called Malama Maile. So recently, as someone who has gathered for very special reasons, I personally have seen Maile patches that were once very lush and plentiful have been totally decimated, sometimes unknowingly, sometimes there's a lot of traffic on a trail and there isn't a proper boot brushing station in that specific place. So we're going to talk about how to responsibly go and gather. So Maile is a woody vine. If you're unfamiliar with Maile, I'm sure most of you are. It's harvested and twined together to create a fragrant lei. May is typically a time where many people go to gather Maile. Here we have the women of Halau, Kale Mokihana, Leināʻala up here, or even as ho'okupu. So in this bottom left picture, I have ho'okupu that I gave at Mauna Kea. So Maile is also something that you can give as an offering or ho'okupu. So how can we all practice and promote proper gathering? First step is to always ask permission. That could be asking permission for private landowners or public spaces getting a permit. And culturally, for me, that would be oliing and asking permission to gather from a place. Second is to biosanitize your gear, and this means all of your gear. This means your pruners, your gloves, your shoes, even the bottom of your pants. So anything that's going into the forest, even if you're not going to look for lehua, there's always a chance of spreading rot, especially here on Kauaʻi. So we really want to be safe with brushing off all the mud before we go into a place and biosanitizing with alcohol. For me personally, I also like to prune after I go and pick Maile. This helps the bush itself grow out more, and it's able to create more vines for when I do want to go back and I want to go and gather again. And then lastly, you want to pick only what you need. So anytime we go and gather, we always want to take just what we need for ourselves. And then to prune, here's an example of a healthy Maile vine. The next slide is going to be a dried out vine that still needs some time to recover after someone had gone before me to pick and hadn't pruned off those stalks that they picked from. And then I always pick right above a node, which is where the leaves are coming out. So it's able to grow and start propagating again. And then let's see. So there's a difference right here on the last slide of a really dried out vine that someone picked and then didn't prune after, and then a healthy one. All righty, awesome. So if you have any questions about that or want to know more about getting permits, proper permitting, go ahead and check out the links in the chat. And bookmark that for when you want to go holo holo at Mauka. So let's get into the talk. You didn't come here to talk to me and listen to me talk about it. So let's talk to our panelists. I'm going to introduce Ka Hamakua Hamakua from Kanu Ka Aina Charter School. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Kahea. I am so happy that you were able to come and speak about the importance of language, knowing a place name, and your connection to the forest.
Yeah, mahalo nui. Thank you I'm so honored to be here. You know, no uiho personally, my connection to the forest, you know, as a Kanaka Hawaii, in general, we're connected to land, right, in general. And which is simply, it's because we are one with our Aina, yeah. Maka ike Hawaii, the Aina, the forest, the kai, all environmental elements in that aspect are a part of us, yeah, and as we are a part of them. Just like that olelo no eao, I'm sure that you folks heard it before. He ali'i ka aina, he kawa ke kanaka ai. So the land is the chief and we as kanaka are the servants. And so connecting with the forest is simply just because that we are one. But another way that I love to connect with our forest is understanding and breathing life into the importance of the vahi, the inoa vahiya, the place names. And so we're gonna go into why it's so important. Why is it important to know the place names? Yeah. So our kupuna, you know, we're so akamai, they're so intellectual in being able to not only recognize, but also identify plants, animals by their names, most times being binomial or makavalu, as there's multiple layers of meaning. And we'll get more into that as we talk with Kumu Leināʻala as well. But they're also able to recognize the mass amount of vegetation units, such as landforms, plant communities, and the type of ecological zones, which is what we're going to talk about, the Vau, yeah? Vau Akua and Vau Nahele.
Yes, mahalo. I'm going to go ahead and share screen for your slides, but tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you come from Molokai originally, and then you have your ohana here out in Hanamaulu and beautiful keiki, and we're tell us a little bit about how you personally connected to the forest here.
Well, for me, I mean, I'm originally born and raised on the island of Molokai. I moved here a few years, 12 years ago, 12 years ago, and I'm still here on Kauaʻi. I do have, I'm a mommy of 5 keiki. And, you know, for myself, I connect here to Kauaʻi, mainly because if I look at my genealogy, our family was originally from Kauaʻi, Lauaʻikai, specifically. And another connection is having that that pilina with Kokeʻe, or Kanaloa Hulu Hulu as we know it. And the reason I bring that up is because I was connected to that area specifically because of my late Kumu Hula, Dana Kauaʻi Iki Olores. That is my Kumu Hula. And we connected back together when I moved here to Kauaʻi at Kanaloa Hulu Hulu. And so that is my special connection to Kauaʻi's forest.
Beautiful, beautiful. Mahalo for sharing that.
Mahalo.
All right, we're just gonna share screen right now. And here we are. Okay, Olelo Hawaii and the importance of place names.
So I'm not sure if you folks know, but Olelo Hawaii wasn't as spoken as it is today. About 30 years ago, it was more like a dying language. I mahalo my kupuna because I was blessed to have been able to grow up in the Olelo Hawaii and Ike Hawaii through my ohana and through kupuna on Molokai. So I mahalo that and know that it's important because it's our host culture language. We live in Hawaii. So why not perpetuate the language of the land that we live on? Yeah. Anyhow, we were gonna go into the ecological zones. Hawaiian term, we're gonna call it Vau, ai. So Val, which is the general term for inland region, usually forested, not necessarily dangerous, but often uninhabited. Yeah. So we would classify it more of like a rainforest. And the two places, because they're so much different, as you can see it in the slide over here, there's multiple zones. But we're only going to talk about these two, Kauaʻi and Nahele. And the reason for that is because the places that we're going to be talking about actually is in these type of zones. Yeah. So Kauaʻi, Akua meaning God, gods, goddesses, spirit, divine, supernatural. This is kind of like the realm of the supernatural where you're able to tap into your spiritual self in the Kauaʻi. And so funny because I was watching Helen speak about her last forest Friday, and she spoke about the moon, Hua. And it's funny because coincidentally, Akua is the moon right after Hua. So it's also a moon phase Akua. So that Val Akua. So just thinking about that, we're thinking about the spiritual, the supernatural spirituality in Akua, the Val Akua. And then we have Vau Nahele, yeah, or Nahele. Nahele derives from the word Nahelehele, which is weeds. It's not the type that we think that we see on the side of the road. It's just anything that grows. Yeah, so Vau Nahele, generally a term for inland upland forests. And a saying that they say with Nahele is, or for Vau Nahele is, O ka Vau Nahele he vaihona no ka vai ola akane. So you'll hear a lot of Hawaiian proverbs throughout our speaking today, but the forest gives the life-giving waters of Kane. And Kane, as you folks know, is our Akua, or the god of fresh water or life-giving waters. So when we talk about the different place names that we're going to be featuring today, let's think about Vau Akua and Vau Nahele, a place where we can tap into our spirituality side, a supernatural place, as well as the lush environment of the Nahele.
Mahalo, mahalo. And then we also journey up to the Alakai. All of the places that you're talking about today are actually work sites as well for Kauaʻi Invasive Species, as well as the Kauai Forest Birds Recovery Project.
Amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so Alakai. I'm sure you folks heard this word a few times. It's kind of like a known word, Alakai, to lead, to be a leader. But if we break it up, right, we can see that ala could be path, could be a trail, a road, but it also can mean to be awake, to rise up as a generation as well. And then we have ka'i, right, also to lead, direct, to lift up and carry, kind of same like ala, right, to rise. But it could also mean to pull weeds, as nahelehele. Amazing, right? It also means fishnet, or it could also mean the snare for a bird. So if we think about that, if we think about Alakai and the Vahi, and we're looking at the picture right now, is there manu up there? Where back in the olden days that our kupuna used to use that Vahi, that road, that ala, to maybe snare for a bird. You know, so those are things, the makavalu, the different layers of meanings of one name. So our kupuna were very intellectual, and they knew that names represent the certain what could be done over there, what could be seen over there. So when we think of Alakai, let's think of what are the animals, the plants, you know, what are those things that derived up there.
It's very interesting that you said fishnet as well, or a net, because if you think about it, the swamp itself is almost like a basin at the top, and it catches all that water. Yeah. Yeah, and it was just great to hear that, you know, you hear ala as road, and then this is why I picked that photo. It's a long stretching path. Yes, it is put in by man, but it is a long stretching path. And then to connect that to the birds as well, because I know that the Kauai forest birds do monitor birds up there as well. Our rare native birds.
And then of course our Olelo no Eo, He hoa kaua no Alakai. The rain is a companion to Alakai. So I'm going to assume that it always rains up there, or there's abundance of water that comes from Alakai just by the inoa. All right. And then we have Kilohana. This one was interesting to me because prior to me speaking today, I didn't actually know there was a Kilohana peak. I knew that there was a Kilohana crater over here on Kauaʻi. So for me to have known that, I was like, wow, there's 2 Kilohana here on Kauaʻi. How significant is that? And not on top of that, Kilohana is also a name used throughout Hawaii. So on Molokaʻi, we also have a Kilohana, which is located in Ualapuʻe, which is on the east side of Molokaʻi. So very interesting how our inoa, our wahi, inoa wahi can be throughout Hawaii, yeah. But anyhow, so Kilohana in itself is extended meaning is excellent, right? And if you look at where it stands in this picture, this is from Kilohana, right? I'm assuming. Yep. Look at how excellent it looks. Very high, very up there, right? The lookout top view, high point. And if you think about excellency, you think high point, right? So Kilohana. And if we break it up, we see kilo, to watch, to observe, to look around, right? And it's also it also could mean like an astrologer, you know? So if you think about kilo, you think about looking at our skies and the clouds, the color of the sky, the stars. And so those are the most important things to kilo, right?
Or even
and then we have
oh, Malamai. Just to touch on that kilo as well, is that when you know, you are looking for a rare forest bird, that's really what you do, is you kilo and you look for that. You know, it's not like they're not all of them are large birds. They're actually all very small birds to go. So when you're up in that area, you're kiloing for them.
Right. And I forgot to mention, kilo could also mean to gather the remains in the soil after you pull out a crop or you remove a crop. So that is also an interesting thing, especially being that it's in the Wauakua, Waunahele area. And then we have hana. Yeah, hana is also another word that I think is pretty used often. Yeah, like we go, oh, mom stay at hana or dad stay at hana, which is working. Yeah, labor, our job, our employment. And so when you think of kilohana, the hana to kilo, the work to observe and to look. So just very interesting to hear, to put these words together and then come up with kilohana, the place, the wahi.
And I think anyone who's done this hike knows that it is hana to get out there. It is a whole thing to get all the way to Kilohana. It is, I mean, if you've done those stairs and you've done this hike, you know that once you get to the end, you get to the lookout, that it was a well-earned view.
I like that.
Lucky to get it, you know? And
I like that, well-earned.
Yeah, and even Queen Emma did a whole tour of the islands. And when Queen Emma went up there, there's a whole story about her going up on horseback and going when there isn't a whole boardwalk to go on. And she went to Kilohana Point.
Amazing. And then I know Halen actually shared with me too, which I thought was super cool, is the Kilohana that we see right now overlooks Halele'a area, more Napali Waimea, you could see all of that side. And if you go to the Kilohana crater area, then it overlooks the Hanamaulu, Nawili Wili, all of the what we know as Lipu'e side. So it's just amazing how, you know, high point, how Kilohana it is.
Yeah. All
right, and then we have Pihea. I thought Pihea was interesting. This is the first time I ever heard this inoa, Pihea. And it pretty much describes this area. And believe it or not, I've actually never been to any of these places, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But Pihea, Kawava Pihea Anamanu, right? So if we think about P, it's the sputtering, the sound of, and the hair to call, kind of like my name, Kahia, right? To call. So Pihea, the sound that the birds make. The birds make. And so I've never been to Pihea, but I did look it up on a topographic map, and I've noticed that it kind of sits in like a bowl. I don't know, like the ridges make kind of like a bowl. So if you think about that, as a musician, when you sing, it kind of like acoustics. It has a nice acoustics by the way that the mountain is shaped. And so I thought that was interesting with the Vava Pihea and the Manu. And I'm gonna assume that there's plenty Manu up there.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that you've never been to these places, but we I guess a few questions for me would be, as we go through these names and we makavalu these names, for you, what is the importance of knowing the names of these places and perpetuating Olelo Hawaii in that way, and why you have chosen, even though you've been here for 12 years and you've never gone to these places yet?
Yes, it's interesting, and it's funny because I felt a little bit shame after Hayden was asking me, and I was like, oh, it was hard for me a little bit to kind of talk about these areas, especially not being able to have or never went there. And it's because you can really get the deep meaning of different places by going to that area. So if I went to Kilohana or Pihea or Alakai, then I would really truly be able to embrace the true meanings of the names by kilo, right? By kiloing the vahi. But for myself personally, that's funny that you said that, but the reason why I choose it spiritually, for myself as a Kanaka Hawaii, I feel like I should be invited. If I don't have a reason, or if I'm not invited, or if I'm not called to that area, I won't just go just to take a picture or do any of it. That's not for myself. That's how I perpetuate the vahi, is to have respect for the vahi without entering without permission, right? So for instance, I'll share this with you folks. Being here 12 years, I've never been to Polihale up until 2 years ago. Crazy. And I've only been to Polihale 3 times, but I've only went there for a reason. I didn't go just because I've seen multiple pictures of it. It's beautiful. And then I finally went there. I was like, oh my gosh, I can see why everybody goes. But for myself, because I know the history and because I know the stories and the meaning of the vahi, the name of that vahi, I wasn't gonna go just because. I needed to have a reason, or I needed to be invited to be there.
Mahalo for sharing that perspective that you have. I would like to open the floor for anybody that has questions, or Julia or Kim, have you seen any questions roll in? I'll go ahead and stop sharing screen. And then I guess one more question for you would be, what's the importance of perpetuating these wahi inoa and these place names for you as a kumu yourself?
For myself, a lot of the inoa hold ike, right? As we've seen now, breaking down the inoa, there's mo'olelo stories that is told within the wahi inoa. And so the reason to perpetuate it is because if it's gone, then we no longer know the reason for those names of those different areas.
Beautiful, mahalo. I guess if there's no other questions that have come in, I'll go ahead and move on. Oh, sharing about Koke'e. No, Jeremiah, we are sharing all about Koke'e. Just stay tuned, and if you missed Kahea's section, this will be up on our respective Facebooks, and you can watch that section later on as well. So to move on, to keep time, I'm going to introduce Natalia Tangalin. She is joining us from the KISC office today. She is our early detection botanist. Natalia is born and raised on Kauaʻi. She has had experience in the conservation and botany field for the last 20 years. She's recently joined KISC, and she graduated from UH Manoa with a graduate certificate in endangered species management from Durrell Institute, and Mauritius Wildlife Fund is where she spent a couple of her years. And on her off days, she likes to propagate rare native plants, which we really appreciate her for. Aloha, Natalia, thank you for joining us today.
Hi. All right. So I'm gonna share screen here real quick, and what I'm gonna do is I want to start. We're kind of in Kokeʻe and on the Alakai, so I'm going to start there, and I'm going to talk about a KISC target that we're dealing with on the Pihea Trail. You guys see my screen?
Yes, yes, we can.
Great. Let me go from current slide. So yeah, this is a KISC target that we're dealing with. Yes.
Oh, sorry, there was a bit of a lag, so now we can see it as the presentation.
Okay. Oh, and it just went back. Okay, so this is a sedge that is an invasive sedge that is on the Pihea Trail, and it is a KISC target. And I'm sure everybody's kind of up to speed on invasive species and kind of where this is coming from. But this is something that you can see along the trail. It's being moved deeper into the Alakai. Right now, it's mostly on the Pihea Trail. There's been a few small patches on the trail that goes out to Kilohana Lookout on the Alakai Swamp Trail. It's got these sticky seeds. It actually has like a mucous membrane that can stick to things a little better. And we recently worked with KISC, worked with Kokeʻe KRC, Kokeʻe Resource Conservation Program, to help eradicate this. I just went and surveyed it yesterday, and we've gone from about 350 plants to about 95. So pretty significant, pretty good. The thing with this is the seed bank lasts up to 10 years. So that's an issue. We have to keep going back. You can see the map here, and you might even be able to see the topography that the Kumu was talking about. And it is interesting. I've been on that trail, and sometimes tourists will be really far and they'll be talking kind of loud and boisterous. And it's interesting the way that sound carries. I also remember as a kid when there were still flocks of biibi and apapane left, especially with apapane, you could hear that wing clicking, and that sound would carry. And that's not something you hear anymore, but I do remember it as a kid. So you can see the trail here, and it goes up Pihea, up to Pihea Vista and down, and then into the Alakai. So this is something we're very concerned about, because at KISC, what we do is, and what's interesting, I'll go to the next one. I'll come back to this in a second, but this is our target here. But what's going on here is when you're out here, do I not have that slide there? I may not have it, but this is how you identify this one. It's got this pith area, and it's very spongy. If you touch it, it's soft, it collapses. There are other sedges on this trail. These are actually two natives that you see here. They're potential lookalikes. They can occur in the Alakai, but you can see that there are differences. They don't have that pithy. They have that little U. When you touch this one, it's going to feel hard. It's not going to feel like the other one did. Let me see if I have those slides. And I somehow don't. Sorry, guys. I did this super fast. Anyway, there are two other juncuses that are on the trail. And they have a different look to them. They don't have this pithiness, but I guess even when I'm out there, I'm seeing these other two weedy things that are also in the same genus. They're also juncus, and I'm wondering, well, why aren't we concerned about these? And what we do at KISC is we have a very detailed protocol. We go through, and things are rated based on their characteristics. So we're going for these things that are incipients, but we're also looking at the things that don't behave well and don't play nicely, and the species that come in and they want to push the natives out. They want to take more resources and kind of take over. So this is why this one is of a concern to us. So just something, if you're out there and you see something that you think doesn't belong, especially with practitioners, cultural practitioners who are really aware, you might not know exactly what you're looking at, but you know that it's something you haven't seen before. Take a picture if you can. Any kind of description you can give, things that you might notice that could disappear, potentially color, if it has a smell, but take some notes on that, take some pictures. If you can get a GPS point on your phone, that's great. If not, just describing the location and get that information to KISC. This is just showing kind of different things, leaf margins, different things that you can notice. And a lot of people that have a cultural background or working with plants or have a really good eye for plants. So I don't worry too much. This, I just wanted to share this. This is a native sedge that is along the Pihea Trail. It's a Luzula hawaiiensis. And part of how you recognize this, if you look at this picture here, you see all these like hairs, almost cobwebbiness coming off the leaves. That's how you recognize this one. This one is endemic, and it's kind of a really neat thing. And this is something that'll get pushed out by that juncus, which will form a mat and just kind of take over swampy areas. These are just the plants that are endemic to the Kokeʻe region and also to the Alakai area. And I wanted to share some of those just to show kind of the flora that we're trying to protect. The one with the big white flowers is Kopiko, and there are several different Kopikos. This one is grandiflora. I think there are about 15 left in Kokeʻe. And it's a gorgeous thing. Those are really nice big flowers, maybe over an inch long. Next to it is a Labordia. And this, I think, has 4 individuals left. It's a plant that has a separate male and female plants, which is common in the Hawaiian plants. Since this talk was about collecting, I just kind of wanted to show more how the scientific community collects. Those are bags up, which were used to catch that seed. And a lot of plants were grown, and hundreds of these were planted out into the exclosures. I don't know how they're doing. I haven't had checked in with that project, but they have been outplanted successfully. And this is one of my favorite Kokeʻe plants. This is the haha up there, the Cyanea leptostegia. The picture in black and white is an old rock picture. You can see that this thing used to go up to 40 feet tall. And this is something that within the last 5 years, you'll be able to see these things off Makaha Ridge Road when you're going down to Kumu area. You don't see this anymore. This thing is disappearing, and it is considered common, but try to go find it these days. And it forms those beautiful, thick purple flowers underneath like that. This is a geranium. It's Kauai's native geranium, and it is in the bogs. This is something that rush could potentially crowd out. It's a little geranium. If you see here the fruit there, it's like a catapult. What it'll do is it'll catapult its seeds out. And this again is a Kauai endemic, and just in the Alakai and just on the bogs on Kauai. When I would see this thing, there were maybe 300, and I'm hearing less than 150 left now. And that, I think, is it. I don't know where those other slides went. I must have deleted them.
Mahalo for that.
Yeah, that is that. Let me get out of share screen.
Oh, good. Mahalo, Natalia. That was great. That was, I mean, to see all those, it was really concerning to hear the numbers that those native plants are at right now. I mean, thank you so much for sharing that. And for anybody who has any more questions, or, you're wondering about reporting anything you see in the forest, like feel free to email us at kisc@hawaii.edu, or even call us and let us know, take pictures. It always helps. Before we go, Natalia, I do have some questions for you. So we are talking about how we connect to the forest, and as someone who spent almost 20 years as a botanist and spending time in these environments, how do you connect to the forest, personally or even professionally? And do you what are some of your favorite plants that you love to see in the forest besides the haha?
I think that most of my connection with the forest, just because of, most of us spend 40 hours of our life in our jobs. So most of my time has been luckily spent, now I'm working with KISC, so I'm more working with non-natives and aliens, but I spent most of that time working with natives. So, and in a capacity where I was observing. You're just kind of constantly observing, you're moving through, you're looking for different colors, different patterns. So I spent years kind of doing that. And it's different in that my collecting was, I probably made more than 4,000 herbarium specimens, where you cut a piece of a plant, you press it on a piece of paper, you dry it. And I did have pictures on those that somehow got lost. But so that's kind of been more my collection mode. And those go mostly into the NTBG herbarium, which I think is going over 90,000 specimens. And there's a value to that, but I would say largely my capacity has been as a witness. And what I really witnessed is a huge decline, even in my, in my short span, where you would go into valleys, and the guy I would work with, who's been working over 30 years, would tell me there used to be hundreds of haha in this valley. And I would walk in and see dozens, and I walk in today and you're lucky to see 1 or 2. So I think my relationship, and also, on the science side, it's more of, like I said, I feel like it's been more of a witness. But I definitely, with the decline I'm seeing, do think there needs to be kind of more of a call to action, and we're done. And even with people growing these things, I think there's been too much of a disconnect between, you need a PhD to grow these things. And I do think that I grow a lot of native plants. I've been growing them for a private reserve. And it's not connecting with the forest, but sometimes connecting with land that is so highly disturbed and grazed, but seeing the plants you grow go back into that system and really help to make it better. So I do think, and it's great that we have charter schools, but it'd be nice to see people growing these species, growing it in their yards and connecting with them so that we can start to rebuild what has been lost, because it's being lost.
Mahalo, I totally agree with that. Even if you're just looking to gather maile every time, or ali'i, or anything that you are fond of, if you're available to get those places, like when there's a plant sale, NTBG, or KNL, Kauaʻi Nursery and Landscaping, we highly recommend that if you are somebody that loves native plants, then look into getting your green thumb started and bringing those plants into your home and connecting to those things, and maybe even have that opportunity to collect the seeds from your yard and give them to people like Natalia, who are able to propagate a lot of it and, you know, save these species. Mahalo, Natalia. That was a great talk that you had for us.
I actually have a follow-up question for Natalia. I was wondering if, Natalia, you know anything about the relationship between those native plants and the native birds? Because, you know, we know that they're all disappearing. Many of the species have already been lost. So do you know of the species you mentioned, if there's any special relationship with the native birds?
Oh, definitely. Like with the haha, those are those big bellflowers, and there would have been a native honey creeper that would have pollinated those. And so whenever I've looked at it and I've tried to get seed off of that one, and a lot of times the fruits are half developed and you don't have a lot of viable seeds in there. And that probably is because the honey creeper that pollinated that haha is gone, or in such low numbers that it can't really be effective anymore. But most things have an issue with they're being now pollinated by a honeybee or something that wasn't designed to pollinate that flower. So you get some, but you don't get good pollination happening. And then with the Labordia I showed, that has a separate male and female plant. So with that, it can't self. Some things can self, but when you're separate like that, you can't. Although plants are loosey-goosey, they can change sexes. I've seen a plant that's almost all female flowers, throw out a couple males once in a while. So they are a little bit more, loosey-goosey, but without the pollinators, it's a huge issue for sure. And the birds are critical pollinators for so many Hawaiian species.
Right. Thank
We
you.
do have a question in the chat from Jeremiah for you, Natalia. When does hahalua blossom?
I've seen it in the summer. Yeah. And then as the flowers get older, they kind of change color. So, but if I can recall correctly, I've seen it summer, June, July, August. Yeah.
Thank you. Mahalo. All right. So moving on. Thank you again, Natalia, for joining us. And that was a beautiful talk. Very passionate call to action, especially for all of us that care about our native forests and plants. And lastly, but not leastly, I would love to introduce my kumu, Kumu Leināʻala Pavao Jardin of Halau Kale Mokihana o Leināʻala. She's joining us from Kalaheo today. So Kumu Leināʻala began dancing hula when she was 3 years old, and she has danced her whole life. And she actually danced under Kumu Ray Fonseca, late Kumu Ray Fonseca, and she has since moved home, got blessing to begin teaching hula, which I am very grateful for, and some of our hula sisters are here tonight. And today she'll be talking to us about her connection to the forest in the role of a kumu hula and a cultural practitioner. Mahalo for joining us tonight, Kumu.
Mahalo. Nawa e ka mana ohi ipo ine I vehi uka po hina kalu he ala e aku uki no e aku ulau e aku umu o ai ka wau kupu me ke ala Mokihana ho haue e ola ka ko I ka wau anu he aku he mai ola I ka wau. Aloha. That is aloha. That is our oli kuahu that we, our halau, share as we place ourselves in front of Laka and in front of her kinolau, which I want to share with you folks a little bit about that. Let me see. I'm not good with technology, but we're gonna give it a shot. So you know, as a kumu hula, from an olapa moving up into becoming a kumu hula, it is a journey. Much like the Ie, when I think about it, you know, the Ie is a kinolau of Laka, the goddess of Hula, and much like the Ie, and Olapa wraps itself around the Kumu, and it just grows and grows and grows up and searches for light or searches for Ike. And so that is really the journey from an Olapa to a Kumu hula. And even as a Kumu hula, we're always still learning. And this, what I've listened to today, is just tremendous. And I know my haumana is taking notes because I'm going to test them on all of this Ike that was shared today. But you know, a Kumu hula, a Hawaiian practitioner, and Olapa, the pilina, the relationship between us and the forest people, as my friend Kekuhi likes to call it, is a very special pilina because we are an extension. We are an extension. We are one. We are connected, right? And so let me click that over. Oops. All right. So I want to share with you several kinolau. Kinolau is of course, Laka is our deity, our goddess of Hula, and we honor her in all that we do. And when we think of her kinolau, or of her earthly form in which she presents herself, we think of the Ohi'alehua, which is so beloved, which we need to nurture, which we need to be very careful in all that we do with our lehua right now. Yeah. We think of the Ie, which I talked about a little while ago, the Ie, how it wraps itself around the Kumu and searches for knowledge or searches for wisdom and Ike. We think about the Maile. For us here on Kauaʻi, the Maile lau li'i, the small leafed Maile. We think about the Palapalai. We use that very, very often, the Maile and the Palapalai. Currently, of course, as Hula practitioners, we do not touch the Ohi'alehua. Now is not the time, yeah. So these are the kinolau, or the earthly, look, I should have been pressing my button, the earthly forms in which we look, and when we see these flowers, these foliage, we see Laka. We see Laka. When we put these things on our body, we become one, yeah? So I want to talk about a kuahu, or an altar. In Hula, we have what we call our kuahu, or the altar. And you can look at the kuahu in three different ways. You can look at a kuahu as an actual altar. For example, in a halau, and I got this picture offline. My daughter helped me with this presentation. Mahalo, Breeze. You know, in many halau, you have this physical presence, this physical altar in which we place many times before special ceremony, before special events that are coming up in our lives as in the hula world, like Mary Monarch. We would, you know, create our kuahu, and on this altar, or this kuahu, we bring the forest people, right? The green people. We bring the maile, the palapalai, the lama, which is a wood, that all of these different kinolau of Laka, to honor her, to create that sense of connection. And so this is one type of kuahu. The second is the forest. And you know, when we talk about the forest, this is the home of Laka, right? And so when we enter, my haumana know they're listening, that is not our home, right? Our home is here in Kalaheo. So when we head up Mauka and we enter the forest, before even entering, we ask permission. We lay out our intention. This is not our place, but we would like to come. We would like to gather. We ask for blessings. We ask for permission to enter this place, right? And we share as to our intentions as to what the purpose of this gathering is. Okay. And as we venture through the forest, we always be very, very careful, looking down at what we're stepping on. Yeah. Every little step we make, you know, this is Laka's home. There's new life that is growing, to someday adorn us, right? As Olapa. So the forest is the second kuahu that we look at as our halau, a second altar that we honor Laka at. And the third, I find this very special and gives me chicken. Oh, kalamai, my doggy. This gives me chicken skin. Is the olapa, the dancer. You know, once we are clothed or adorned with the kinolau of laka, we become the altar. We become the kuahu. And so there is specific oli that we share when dressing our kino, our bodies. You know, there is specific oli and protocol that we do when we make our lei. All of this because the intention and the goal is to dress the kuahu, right? And in this case, as you look at Brailin Aiwohi, you can feel her energy, her spirit, her connection, her pilina. Not with, in this case, you wouldn't believe it, but she's in a dressing room at Mary Monarch. But had I not told you that, you might have thought she was up in Kokeʻe, because her focus, her connection is not in the dressing room. She has now been adorned with laka. She is now an extension, a message, a storyteller, right? So she's out of her body, of her physical being. She is manifesting all of what she has to do, her job, her story, her mele that she has to share. Let me see here. Color my screen's not going. Oh, Alana, my screen is
Try,
stuck.
oh, there,
Oh.
yeah.
So, you know, I have such a deep connection, and most hula dancers and all kumu hula, of course, due to the forest. But here, I want to share as well, this is a very special time for us. We spend much time up in Kokeʻe here on Kauaʻi, but this is on the big island at Kalopa. This is where my kumu lays at rest. And so for me, this is part of our protocol. This is part of our journey each year as we go to Mary Monarch, or even whenever I visit the big island, I try to get up to visit him and to be in that ambiance of laka and that ambiance of hula, to smell, to feel, to touch, to be just embraced by all of that is so, so important and so sacred. These are me with some of my alakai at there at Kalopa. But the connection is really intense. Our Halau celebrates 25 years this year. And I know that's crazy, right? I'm not even 25 years old. But anyway, we're celebrating 25 years, and we really have this new determination to become better Aina warriors, to become more educated, to learn as much as we can so that we can share to the next generation. And for a long time in the hula world, much of what you knew was kept secret in your own school or your own halau. But now it's different. Now I feel like to share and to learn is so important, because what we're talking about today would not be of any use if we don't share it with our keiki and the next generation, right? And so I think this is so important that what we do here today will have such a huge impact on our keiki and the future of our forests, the future of our uplands, and these very, very special wahi.
Mahalo, Kumu. Mahalo for sharing that with our audience tonight. I'd like to open the floor for anybody that has questions. If not, I have some in place. What are some principles that you instill in us as haumana besides, I know that you talked about, treading carefully and we're entering a sacred space, but for those of us that are here that aren't olapa, what are some principles that you would instill as we enter sacred spaces like this?
Well, like I said, right, is asking permission. That's key, number one, asking permission and your intentions. I always tell my students, if you're having a bad day, you leave that back. That does not go into the forest with you, because what you pick, what you gather goes into your lei, and that lei goes on yourself, which is the kuahu, and that has to be all pono. It has to be all pure with the best of intentions, and from the time that we gather from the start that we pule, we oli, we gather to the time that we take it off and return this lei to the Aina, that is such an important part. Like, I go crazy if I see palapalai in the trash or maile. Oh my gosh, right? We don't do that. We don't throw a fellow human being into the Aina. Better yet, I mean, into a trash can. Better yet, a lei or something so special like this. So for us, from all the way to the end of that lei now holds so much mana, holds so much energy and spirit. I personally love taking my lei and giving it back to the Aina. Sometimes I go down to the ocean and I love seeing it, float away. But it's how you dispose of it, and it's not disposing, right? It's bringing it home. It's bringing it home and allowing it to that cycle,
Yeah, I would say that connection of viewing the forest as a sacred place and as a deity and as a person, going up to gather, creating your lei, and then having that full cycle can almost be paralleled with the natural cycles of our akua that happen in nature, that our watershed starts up Moka and then it works its way down to the kai. Just in those practices that we do. And I mahalo you so much for taking us. I think the last photo was that from the first year of Mary Monarch when we went to Kalofa.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, just mahalo you again for instilling those values in us as haumana of yours. I know we are a little short or running a little over time, just a couple minutes, but we do have one question coming in, and I'm gonna have this as a round robin for all of our panelists. And this comes from Ryan Oyama. He says, we know that the biggest risk to our health of our forests is the collapse of native forest bird populations. We know that rats, mosquitoes, and other serious threats are for our forest birds, as well as that relationship between native plants and forest birds. So we need to do everything we can to protect them. Right? So how do we raise cultural, political, and financial support for these native species that are going extinct, in your opinion? I'd like to start with Kumu, and then we can go through Natalia and then end with Kahia. So again, how do we raise cultural, political, and possibly financial support for these native species that are going extinct, in your opinion?
Well, I think we have to just everybody has to be concerned about this. And everything is alolua, it's two parts to it, right? So from the ocean up to Mauka, we have to malama everything, right? From the birds to the plants to our water flow, everything. It's full circle. It's full circle. And so attention has to be given to all these different things. And as Kanaka, we have to reach out. We have to push for financial support from our legislators, and we can do it, because we need that support, and we need to get into our schools. We need to get into our public schools. Our keiki need to learn how important this is. And one of the greatest things I found about my daughter attending Kawaikini, she was immersed in these kind of topics all the time. I learned from her, when she came home and said, "Oh my gosh, Mom, we learned about this bird today," and da 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 da. And I mean, just incredible. So we have to support that big, vast native species, that we have, and we have to just push forward. We have to speak up, come together, hui together, and move forward now.
And that's why you have us, Kim, myself, and Julia. We are the public outreach people, so it's a small team, but we're working on it. We tried. Same question, Natalia. I mean, we already kind of answered this question of wanting to propagate these native plants, but any other comments you have on how we can further bring awareness to our native species that are going extinct?
I think the Kumu put it really well, and I'm encouraged to hear terms like Aina warriors. And I was reading, I recently read the Braiding Sweetgrass, and I thought it was interesting. And then, in Hawaiian culture, you always hear about Kalo being the older brother to the Hawaiian people. And she was talking about that culture where the sugar maple, this maple was the older sibling to their people. And I think that indigenous cultures seem to see the plant world and the plant kingdom and, you know, the natural surroundings as something to be honored and something that is important and a part of us. And so I think having leadership from the community coming forward and having Aina warriors and standing up for these things, that's excellent, because the scientists, like, it's not enough. Like, we can go out there and we can watch it decline, but we need the kids in the schools knowing these things. We need them growing these things. And the charter schools are excellent, but we need it in the public schools, because honestly, you put a Haole kid in a charter school and a Hawaiian kid loses a spot. That isn't right, but we need everybody on board or it's not going to work. So I definitely think everything you guys are saying and seeing the leadership coming from young Hawaiians is awesome. And I look forward to seeing more of that.
Mahalo, Natalia. And finally with Kahea, same question.
Awesome. I can only agree with everyone else. And for myself as a Olala Hawaii speaker, a way to raise it is to bring life to the inoa. We always tend to gravitate to calling different places and different areas by the nickname, and usually it's an English name. But to raise awareness and to really know the inoa Hawaii of the different places, and not just only for ourselves, but like I am totally in agreement. Like, we should be teaching more of that to our next generation. And yes, in the public schools is the one thing that lacks that the most. A lot of the charter schools have that availability to have all of that cultural influence. Me being somebody that even went to those type of schools, so I'm not even familiar with how the public school works, but definitely need to have more cultural education in the public schools. But through Olelo Hawaii, I truly believe that is a great way to raise cultural awareness to the different native plants and the areas in the Wahi.
Mahalo. We just have a couple other questions. Kim, we got a question from Kim.
We have a question from Kim. Well, not a question. I just want to obviously echo what everybody else already said about that question. And I would just like to throw in two other ideas, and that is, because the question directly also asked about political, right? As individual citizens, we can write letters to all of our county and state representatives and just encourage them and remind them how important either these places, these plants, these birds, the flora, the fauna are to us. Because if they don't hear it from us, they're not going to know. So we need to bend their ear. So send them letters, send them monthly letters, write letters to the editor of our local newspapers. Get your voices heard in that way too. In addition to everything else, everybody else has already said, yeah.
Yep, email, call, our legislators have, they are public servants, so don't be afraid or intimidated to, get what you're passionate about out to them. I highly recommend that as my own personal practice. And then lastly, I just wanted to remind everyone, if you want any more information about any of the topics we talked about, go back in the chat, or you can email kisc@hawaii.edu and we'll be able to send you all of the links we dropped in the chat tonight. We have a question from Sam Potter. He's asking, where can we send photos of invasives and where can I learn what endangered and native plants might grow well in my area? So go ahead and email me, kisc@hawaii.edu, if you have any suspect plants, and we'll send that over to Natalia and she'll be able to identify them. We'll get back to you. And then as far as learning about what endangered plants are good for your area, I would recommend going to one of our Pono partners. Plant Pono is a program where there are nurseries on the island that actually grow native plants and sell native plants, and they can answer all of your specific questions. So if you go on the KISC website, we have a list of all of our Plant Pono partners as well. And lastly, Julie, I see your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to say this was amazing. Thank you so much. This was really great. I learned a lot. And I heard a lot about educating the kids. And I think this is the way to go about, really any problems we have. So what I did is I dropped in the chat box, the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project has developed lesson plans that are available for free about forest birds, not only on Kauai, but everywhere in Hawaii. And you can just go there. It's in the chat. Go to the KauaiForestBirds.org Facebook page and you can use them and educate your kids at home or wherever you want to educate them.
Yes. Mahalo. I know we are running a little bit over time. Mahalo, everybody, for joining us. We do have one last activity. It's an interactive activity. It's called Mendimeter, and it's just going to ask you how you connect to the forest. So Julia, if you could share screen, we're just going to share that. And again, mahalo for all of you for being patient and staying with us tonight as Julia gets that up. If you have any further questions, feel free to forward those to kisc@hawaii.edu. And if you missed anything or you came in late tonight, this video, this live recording will be up on all of our respective Facebooks, so you can watch it later, send it to your friends, save it for a presentation. And yeah, so if you just head over to menti.com, the link is in the chat, and you can go ahead and write something about how you connect to the forest, and we would love to see that. Awareness, sit in quiet, be present. Bird watching, breath. Ooh, here we are, birding, hiking, finding peace, mo'olelo, mele, togetherness, being present, finding peace, plants, kilo, especially serenity. And I think for myself, I just wanted, I'm not gonna do it because I'm the host here tonight. For me personally, it would be defending the places that we care about the most, because we are at a critical time for our natural forests and native species. So Aina warriors and defending our sacred places and our very special and unique species here. We got awareness, more kilo, oli, respecting, koke'e, mele, Aina warriors, kilo for birds. Beautiful, beautiful to see. Again, mahalo everybody for joining us today. And if you have any questions, need any links to anything, we'll be posting that. Or if you want to email me directly as well. Julia is also the outreach for Kauaʻi Forest Birds Recovery Project, and Kim Rogers is our outreach for Rapidohia death for KISC. So
I would just suggest everybody unmute yourself right now and give a big round of applause to our panelists. You guys did such a great job today. I'm grateful for all the work of the effort.
Panelists, we love you. Thank you for joining us.
Mahalo.
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 We'll see you next month.
Bye.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Bye.
Sammy, Kumu.
And
See you
stay
next
tuned
month.
for next month.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Julia and Helen, let's stay on.
Yep. I think we'll stay